Bewitched first hit the screens on September 17, 1964, and it's still a fan favorite today. Although the show only ran for 8 seasons, Samantha's iconic twitchy nose is something that everyone still recognizes. Over the years, there were a few spin-offs, but none quite managed to capture the magic, pun intended, of the original. Here are some fun facts about Bewitched you probably didn't know, including some juicy secrets from the cast and crew. The films that inspired the show, the creator of Bewitched, Saul Sachs, came up with the idea for the show after watching 2 classic films, I Married a Witch and Belle, Book and Candle. He took key elements from both movies to create the script for the pilot episode. In interviews, he mentioned that he wasn't worried about any legal trouble because both movies were owned by Columbia Pictures, which also owned Screen Gems, the studio that produced Bewitched. Elizabeth's anti-aging secret, Elizabeth Montgomery, was a stunner in the 1960s and looked amazing for years. It's easy to think she must have had some kind of anti-aging magic, right? Well, she probably just took really good care of herself, exercising, eating right, and looking after her health. Despite looking fit and healthy on the outside, she actually had some health problems that she kept private. The near-miss Darren. When casting for Bewitched began, Richard Sargent was almost chosen to play Darren Stevens. But while they were figuring out who would play Samantha, they hadn't yet locked in the perfect guy for the role. Sargent took another role, and we'll never really know how things would have gone if he'd been considered for Darren, or how the show might have been different with him in the role. Elizabeth Montgomery played multiple characters. Elizabeth Montgomery wasn't just Samantha. She also played her mischievous cousin Serena. And fun fact, when she played Serena, she went under the name Pandora Spox. Her look changed depending on which character she was playing. And in the episode And Then There Were Three, you'll see her as both Serena and Samantha's cousin. Darren's rocky casting journey. At first, Richard Sargent was offered the role of Darren Stevens, but he passed on it to take another role. Then, Richard Crenna came in, but after the real McCoys, he turned it down as well. In the end, Dick York was cast as Darren, but Richard Sargent briefly stepped in after York left. Unfortunately, the show couldn't survive all the casting changes. The real reason Dick York left. Although it was never officially confirmed, it's widely believed that Dick York had to leave the show because of a painkiller addiction. While filming Kundura, he injured his back badly and was prescribed pain meds. Over time, this became a bigger problem and started affecting his ability to work. Enter Dick Sargent. During Season 5, things took a dramatic turn when Dick York had a bad reaction to a B12 shot during a lunch break. He had a seizure on set and was rushed to the hospital, which led to his permanent departure from the show. Dick York never returned, and for several episodes, Bewitched went without a Darren until Dick Sargent stepped in. It was one of the few bumps in the road for the much-loved show. Elizabeth Montgomery's real-life pregnancies. During the filming of Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery was pregnant 3 times. Her first child was born in July 1964. The show's producers cleverly worked 2 of her pregnancies into the storyline, introducing characters Tabitha and Adam as part of the Stevens family. It's not always a popular choice to add children into a show when an actor gets pregnant, and typically Hollywood uses tricks like creative camera angles to hide it. But in this case, they embraced it and wrote it in. Dick York's charm, as Darren Stevens. Darren Stevens, played by Dick York, was Samantha's mortal husband on Bewitched. Despite his popularity, Dick York only took on a few projects after Bewitched ended, mostly due to his ongoing health issues. It's no surprise to fans considering what he was going through at the time. Alice's Emmy Award 2 months after her passing, actress and producer Bernadette McEntee was posthumously awarded the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress for her role as the nosy Gladys Kravitz. While it's not uncommon for actors to be honored posthumously, McEntee's decision to keep her illness hidden from her castmates and producers was unusual, especially since the series had just begun. Her death shocked everyone involved. In the TV industry, it was pretty standard practice to keep costs low for new shows and even for established ones. This was especially true during Bewitched's early years, when the show was gaining popularity. It was also a great opportunity for supporting cast members to add their own personal touch to their roles. Agnes Moorehead's star-studded brooch, Agnes Moorehead, who played Endora, was often seen wearing a stunning starburst brooch featuring 8.5 carats of old mine diamonds. Elizabeth Montgomery, her close friend and co-star, often admired the piece. When Moorhead passed away in 1974, it was revealed that she had left this precious brooch to Montgomery, a touching gesture of their friendship. Off-camera friendships that blossomed. Despite some of the rumors surrounding his alleged drug habit, Agnes Moorehead didn't want to see Dick York leave the show. She was very supportive of him, especially considering his struggles with painkiller addiction. Moorehead, known for being fiercely loyal, was distressed by York's departure after filming had finished. On the flip side, Moorehead had some tensions with Dick Sargent, reportedly clashing with him on several occasions, which caused some strain. But interestingly, it was these disagreements that seemed to strengthen the bond between Elizabeth Montgomery and Dick Sargent. They supported each other through tough times while filming, and their friendship lasted a lifetime. It's hard to forget Aunt Clara, the lovable yet clumsy character on Bewitched. But did you know that Marion Lawrence, the actress who played her, had a real-life obsession with doorknobs? Lawrence had an incredible collection of over 1,000 antique doorknobs. While it may seem odd to collect such items, doorknobs from old doors can actually be quite valuable. Something you'd see on a collector's show today. Larry Tate's son's heartbreaking story. On Bewitched, when Larry and Louise Tate had a son, Larry, played by David White, requested that their character's son be named Jonathan. This was a tribute to his real-life son Jonathan, who had passed away after complications during his wife's second pregnancy. White had raised his son as a single father, and the show's creators thought it was a beautiful gesture, so they agreed to name the character after him. David White's tragic loss. Sadly, David White's real-life son Jonathan died in the tragic bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, in 1988. Just 2 years later, David White passed away from a heart attack. He and his son are now buried together at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. For years, many believed that the cast of Bewitched was cursed, as several cast members passed away at a young age. After Bewitched, Tabitha, played by the adorable child actress, went on to make appearances in popular shows like Lassie, and, of course, Bewitched itself. She also dabbled in commercial work, did some swimwear modeling, and auditioned for roles alongside major stars like Helen Hunt and Jodie Foster. Eventually, her family decided to move to Orange County, giving her the chance to experience a more normal teenage life. She even became her high school's homecoming queen before moving on to the next chapter in her life. Back in the 1960s, before CGI could easily create magic effects with the press of a button, Bewitched had to rely on old-school stage tricks. When it was time for Samantha to work her magic, Elizabeth Montgomery would stand still with her arms raised while the director shouted, "Cut!" Then, frantic stagehands would rush in to clear the scene of any clutter. It wasn't as high-tech as what we do today, but it was quick, effective, and kept costs low, creating that magical feeling the show is known for. Before Bewitched even started, Elizabeth Montgomery had thought about retiring from acting. But her husband, Bill Asher, who was also a producer on the show, convinced her to take the role. After 8 successful seasons, the network was ready for more, but Montgomery had had enough. According to Kirby J. Pilato, author of Twitch Upon a Star, the show was actually renewed for seasons 9 and 10. However, Montgomery was ready to walk away. Around the same time, her marriage to Asher started to fall apart. The show ended in 1972, and the couple divorced the following year. In a 2017 interview with Fox News, Erin Murphy, who played Tabitha on Bewitched, spoke fondly of her co-stars. While Elizabeth Montgomery might have appeared as the perfect goody two-shoes on screen, Murphy says she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. She had a wicked sense of humor and was one of those rare people who was not only incredibly beautiful, but didn't mind looking a little silly, kind of like Lucille Ball. They both had a knack for delivering really campy, funny moments without hesitation. Elizabeth Montgomery had to keep her arms raised for a surprising reason. Without CGI to rely on, every little magical movement had to be done by hand. Elizabeth had to hold her arms up in the same position while the director shouted, "Cut!" And then, when everyone else scrambled to clear the set, she had to keep holding that pose. She could only lower her arms once the director yelled action again. Talk about a workout. Did you know Bewitched's theme song actually has lyrics? While they were never sung during the opening credits, the song's words include, "You've got me under your spell." Those lyrics were cut before the show aired, but it's a fun little piece of trivia. The lyrics of the theme song are pretty intriguing when you think about it. They're written from Darren's perspective, almost as if he knew his wife was a witch all along. Of course, you could also interpret them as being about a man who's completely spellbound by the woman he loves. Either way, it's an interesting tidbit for fans. Elizabeth Montgomery was known for being incredibly private, especially when it came to her age or personal life. Even after her death, her obituary was a bit off. It listed her as being 57, but she was actually 62 at the time of her passing. She also kept her marriage to Robert Foxworth out of the public eye, and because of that, some obituaries even listed her as single, despite the fact that she was married. Her death certificate had its own inconsistencies as well. Did you know that the late Hollywood superstar Elizabeth Montgomery had her age and marital status wrongly listed in her obituaries? Her death certificate had some errors too. It listed her full name as Elizabeth A. Montgomery, but her real middle name was Victoria, not Anne. Despite being a household name, she was known for keeping her personal life private, especially when it came to details like her age and relationships. Back in the 1960s, when Bewitched was filmed, alcohol use on set wasn't looked at as strictly as it is today. Hollywood unions back then didn't have the same regulations, and alcohol was a common part of sets. However, when children were around, rules were in place to ensure safety. On Bewitched, actors were often instructed to use iced tea to mimic alcoholic drinks. In a bit of life imitating art, Dick Wilson, who frequently played a drunk character on the show, reportedly enjoyed a drink or two behind the scenes as well. As for the show's lead, Elizabeth almost didn't land the role. The creator of Bewitched, Saul Sachs, originally wanted an actress named Tammy Grimes to play the part of Samantha, who was supposed to be called Cassandra at first. Grimes had a natural elfish look that the creators were looking for. However, Elizabeth Montgomery, who was under contract with Screen Gems, ended up landing the role instead. It's hard to imagine anyone else pulling off Samantha's charm as perfectly as Elizabeth did. The character of Samantha was born, and with Elizabeth Montgomery cast in the role, history was made. Tammy Grimes, who had originally been considered for the part, went on to have a successful career, starring in movies and on Broadway, until her death in 2016 at the age of 82. Regarding the set of Bewitched, the house that was used for the Stevens residence was in fact a replica of the house that was shown in Gidget. They went so far as to flip the patio and the interior so that it would look like a prior Gidget movie. In Hollywood, this was a popular practice, particularly during times when studios needed to save money and recycle set ideas they had already created. For more than half a century, the area of Bewitched, which was once referred to as Blondie Street, after the Blondie films, has been utilized. It made appearances in a number of dramas and films spanning a variety of time periods. As an illustration, during the time that Bewitched was being broadcast, the nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz was residing in a house that would later be utilized as the residence of the Partridge Family in the television series The Partridge Family. Prior to the conclusion of Bewitched, the two shows were actually filmed in the same house. Both Gladys Kravitz and the Partridge Family resided in a simple house that was 2 stories tall and had a white picket fence surrounding it. In the year 1999, the fence was taken down, and bay windows were installed in lieu of the previous windows. An additional modification was made to the entrance door, as can be seen in a photograph from the year 2000. In the film I Dream of Jeannie, the house next door was made into the residence of Major Nelson and Jeannie, which is an interesting fact. It was necessary for the production of The Partridge Family to remove around 3 feet of the front yard of I Dream of Jeannie in order to make room for the Partridge bus to drive through the driveway. As a matter of great relief, the yard was eventually brought back to its initial appearance. Actually, there were 2 Tabithas in the room. Erin Murphy and Diane Murphy, who are identical twins, were the actors that performed the part of Tabitha Stevens, the little daughter of Samantha and Darren Mitchell. Using twins for roles that involve babies is rather frequent because it enables both children to work on set at different times, which helps to ensure that everything is done in accordance with the rules governing child labor. To this day, this approach is still utilized. In spite of the fact that they were different from one another, the twins each have their own distinct personality to the character of Tabitha, but they deserved equal credit for their performance. After the premiere of I Dream of Jeannie on NBC, which occurred exactly 1 year after the premiere of Bewitched, fans couldn't help but compare the two comedies. With that being said, Elizabeth Montgomery was not very enthusiastic about the similarity. Even now, there are still fans who continue to misinterpret particular episodes from both shows, which is fair given the similarities between the two shows. But Elizabeth Montgomery never allowed herself to be affected by it. She did not have any ill will toward Barbara Eden and Larry Hagman, who worked on the television show I Dream of Jeannie. Despite the fact that both series featured stunning blonde women who possessed magical abilities, I Dream of Jeannie was about a genie who was 2,000 years old and fell in love with a NASA astronaut. Each show brought its own unique charm and distinctive personalities to television, despite the fact that the plot lines were comparable. After the conclusion of Bewitched, a few of the cast members were confronted with unfavorable circumstances. Several of the show's stars were affected by tragedy, and there were even several catastrophes that occurred on site while the show was being filmed. One of the most well-known episodes of Bewitched is titled, I Confess. And it is in this episode that Darren becomes quite angry with Samantha for using too much magic. He worries that if she does that, she would expose the fact that she is a witch. Within the context of the episode, he demands that they should immediately reveal the truth to everyone. In order to dissuade him from doing so, Samantha has Darren visualize the consequences that might result from his confession. As a result of the responses he receives, he comes to the conclusion that it might not be such a good idea after all. On the other hand, it is somewhat amusing that he never truly witnesses her nose move, despite the fact that this is how the magic is depicted. Regarding the nose wiggle, were you aware that it was actually a camera technique that was being used? Erin Murphy, who played Tabitha, disclosed that Samantha's nose did not twitch too much throughout the entire show. By paying close attention, you will notice that it is not her nose that is moving, but rather her top lip. Certain individuals have been under the impression that her mouth motions caused her nose to wiggle, but in reality, human noses are incapable of moving in such a manner because there are no muscles that would permit such movement. Currently, Bewitched is well known for its eccentric characters, and a significant number of those characters appeared on I Dream of Jeannie as well. The actor Paul Lynde, who played the role of Uncle Arthur on the television show Bewitched, also appeared on I Dream of Jeannie in a number of roles, including that of an IRS agent, a film director, and a NASA commander. In addition to that, he provided the voice for Templeton the Rat in Charlotte's Web and was a regular player on game programs. Dr. Bombay, a witch doctor and family physician, is portrayed by the outstanding Bernard Fox. He is also a member of the Bombay family. Not only was he well known for his outrageous costumes, but he also appeared on multiple episodes of Bewitched and even the Tabitha spin-off. After that, Fox went on to make appearances in Hollywood films such as Titanic and The Mummy before he passed away in 2016. The fact that several of the cast members were actual smokers is a humorous fact about the production behind the scenes. According to reports, Elizabeth Montgomery, Paul Lynde, and Dick York were all heavily involved in the smoking habit. In fact, York smoked around 3 packs of cigarettes every single day. Erin Murphy, who portrayed Tabitha, remembered in a subsequent interview that her parents had constantly warned her about the dangers of smoking, and that she had often pondered the question of why so many people around her continued to smoke if it was so dangerous. The untimely deaths of several major cast members, many of whom fell away to cancer or other health difficulties at quite young years, have led some fans to assume that Bewitched was cursed. This is because several of these cast members died at extremely young ages. Among the key cast members who passed away before reaching the age of 65, Alice Pierce, due to cancer, Paul Lynde, due to a heart attack, Dick York, because to emphysema, and Dick Sargent, due to cancer, are among those who followed in the footsteps of Elizabeth Montgomery, who passed away at the age of 62. It is still up for debate whether this unfortunate trend may be related to the show's mystical themes, or whether it is simply the result of poor lifestyle choices. Richard Dreyfuss made his debut on television in the 1966 episode of Bewitched, playing the role of Rodney, a former warlock that Samantha had taken care of. This accomplishment came before Jaws made a mark in Hollywood. Now that he is an adult, he declares his love for Samantha and even transforms himself into a dog so that he can permanently reside in her home. Naturally, Samantha is attempting to comprehend the means by which she might get rid of him. After that, Dreyfuss went on to pursue a career in Hollywood and become a great star. Regarding the Tabitha spin-off, fans were dissatisfied with the fact that Erin Murphy, who had provided the role of Tabitha in the original series, was not included in the show. On the other hand, Lisa Hartman Black began playing the part of Tabitha when she was an adult. Although the spin-off was not well received, Lisa Hartman Black went on to have a prosperous career and eventually married Clint Black, who is a well-known figure in the country music industry. On the other side, Erin Murphy has, in a number of different ways, managed to keep himself busy. Following her career as an actress, she went on to pursue careers in the fields of makeup artistry, casting production, stunt double work, fashion styling, acting instruction, and motivational speaking. Due to the fact that her son Parker was diagnosed with autism, she is a strong advocate for autism awareness, which is one of the most important issues she supports. She is also involved in the business world, marketing low-calorie frozen vodka martini pops, and she has made an effect in a variety of fields in addition to the entertainment industry. Erin Murphy has revealed the nature of her relationship with her television parents, Elizabeth Montgomery, Samantha, and Dick York, Darren, which takes place behind the studio curtain. Murphy disclosed in an interview with ABC in 2017 how close she was to her on-screen parents, even referring to them by endearing nicknames. She referred to Darren as Daddy and Samantha as Mommy. The bond that Murphy had with Montgomery was described with affection by Murphy, who stated that she admired Montgomery as a parent. Murphy also revealed, which she found hilarious, that she felt more connected to Agnes Moorehead, who played her grandmother Endora, than she did to her own mother. This was an interesting piece of information that she gave. In addition, the show underwent significant alterations, such as the substitution of both the actor who played Darren and the actress who played Gladys Kravitz, the neighbor who was always nosy. Sandra Gould later took up the part of Gladys after the original actress, Alice Pierce, who had performed the character, passed away from ovarian cancer prior to the third season. In a Bewitched spin-off that was released 5 years later, Gould even reprised her role as the character. On the other hand, the fact that the role of Darren was played by a different actor each time had a huge effect on the viewership of the show. The transition from Dick York to Dick Sargent was met with opposition from viewers, who were hesitant to embrace the new performer. This occurred after 3 seasons of the show. The changeover had a severe impact on viewing, and the series endured a drop in popularity during its final 3 years, despite the fact that many fans later came to appreciate Sargent's performance. Over time, Marcia Wallace became well known for her role as Edna Krabappel, the teacher on The Simpsons. She had previously been Darren's secretary on the television show Bewitched. Over the course of the 1970s, Wallace was widely known for her work as Bob Newhart's receptionist on the television show The Bob Newhart Show. As a way of paying honor to her after her passing, the part of Edna Krabappel that she played on The Simpsons began to be retired. One of the most interesting coincidences that occurred in relation to Bewitched was that Elizabeth Montgomery's real-life daughter, Rebecca Asher, was born on June 17th. This was the same day that the twin actresses who played Tabitha, Erin, and Diane Murphy celebrated their birthdays simultaneously. This relationship between the 2 birthdays was considered by some to be a miraculous coincidence. At the age of 89, actor Bernard Fox, who was best remembered for his role as Dr. Bombay on the television show Bewitched, passed away in December of 2016. Fox had a long and successful career in both cinema and television, including a performance that will be remembered for a long time in James Cameron's Titanic. He was a 5th-generation performer, and his death brought an end to a long and successful career in the performing arts. Dick Sargent, who had previously played the role of Darren on Bewitched, made news in 1991 when he disclosed his sexual orientation to the world during a television program hosted by Geraldo Rivera on the occasion of National Coming Out Day. Sargent later stated that the relief of living openly as himself was more significant than the possibility of losing his profession, despite the fact that he was concerned that it might have a bad impact on his career situation. In 1992, Elizabeth Montgomery and Sargent worked together to co-marshal the Los Angeles Pride Parade in order to show their support for Sargent's decision. Fans of all ages continue to have a deep affection for the show Bewitched. As a result of the series' release on DVD, new generations of viewers will have the opportunity to experience the enchantment that Samantha and her family have brought to the world during their time in syndication. In spite of the fact that it ended in 1972, the legacy of Bewitched continues to live on, making it a fan favorite even now.